Hey, my name is Sammy, and I'm going to be talking about 20 different things that I wish I knew before I started applying for Workaway. So, number one is how many applications do you actually have to make in order to get a job offer? This, I think, was the most interesting thing for me. Was I thought I would have to apply way more. Maybe you think you have to apply way less. We'll see. I applied 42 times and I got 9 offers. So to be fair, I was applying to, only listings that fit within our skill range. And we're both vegans, my wife and I, so we were applying only to vegetarian or vegan workaway hosts because, I mean, that would be the most convenient for both parties. But yeah, that's how many it took. The next question kind of leads off of the first, which is, what if you have dietary restrictions? Like I said, we're both vegan, so we only applied to vegetarian and vegan listings. And the way that I did that was in the search keyword search bar. You can just put the word vegan or put the word vegetarian or whatever your dietary restriction is. And all it will show is listings that have that keyword in their somewhere in their listing. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are a vegan or vegetarian host. It will just be somewhere in there. So I found a few that were actually like, we cannot cater to vegans and vegetarians, which I thought was kind of funny because I'm specifically putting the keyword vegan in there, but those people will come up. So you have to look at each listing. But to be honest, it wasn't too difficult to find the listings depending on what country you choose, right? So we were mainly looking at Europe and UK, so it might be different based on a different country, but as far as we could see, it seems very doable to find a listing that will, help you with your dietary restrictions, if not already be in the same camp as you, whether they're vegetarian or vegan. All right, number three is how qualified do you have to be? So my wife and I, when it comes to the things that we're applying to, I think we're somewhat qualified. We're pretty much only applying to farm type stays because that is what we're going to be doing with our life. That's our plan, is to start a permaculture commune. I know commune has a lot of negative connotations, but so we only applied to farm listings, things where you do construction to build tiny houses. And personally, I have some experience with farming. I have some experience with soil building and building some structures, but nothing professional, right? I didn't do any of those for an actual job. My wife hasn't done any of those for an actual job. I did sell mushrooms to a farmer's market one time, but overall, we don't have all that much experience. And we got 9 offers out of 42 applications. So I think that's pretty good for not really having much experience. So if you don't have experience, don't let that deter you. You should still go for it. How difficult is it to find paid work? I was way too ambitious before we started applying with what we would be getting for paid work. Like if we would be able to do all of the listings, all of our stays, paid or not. Extremely difficult. It seems like you definitely need some experience from a high level of experience to get paid work, or you settle for not the best type of paid work. Personally, my wife and I were applying to paid work for the things that kind of seemed more interesting, like hostel work or working at like a cafe or also at a farm, but no one got back to us with an offer. A lot of people just ignored our messages. So that one was definitely, I was too ambitious. Plan to maybe not have paid work in the bag if you're going to be applying, unless you want to apply to a lot of different people. Number 5, how far in advance of your trip should you start applying? So personally, we started applying in September and we're going to be leaving in January. When we first started applying, we didn't know that we'd be leaving in January, but that's just the way that it turned out with the listings that were available, with the people that were available to host us. So yeah, we're going to be going from January to July, and it took from September when we started all the way until November 25th. in order to get everyone locked in for all of our stay, which is January to July. Yeah, you want to definitely give a few months buffer between when you start applying and when you actually plan to leave. Do you need a working visa? This is something that there's so many Reddit posts about, and they kind of all say the same thing, so I'll just reiterate what my experience has been and what everyone else is saying, which is for paid work, you 100% need a working visa. There's no way around it. If you're going to be a employee, you need a visa. But the flip side is you technically still need a visa even for unpaid work, but you can do it without saying that you're going to be doing unpaid work, volunteer work, when you immigrate, right? So when you go to that country that you're immigrating to for a month or for a couple weeks, whatever it is, you just say you're visiting friends, or you're there just for tourism, which both are true. And if you say that you're doing something like Workaway or that you're volunteering, they might ask, depending on the country, for a working permit. Personally, our experience with the Netherlands, we contacted the embassy within the Netherlands for the US, which is where we're from, and they said, even if you're doing volunteer work, you need a working permit. So technically that is the law, that's what you need to do, and yeah, don't consider this advice. You might get rejected. Number 7 is, can I live off of this? I think it's a super fun idea. I don't think it's for my wife and I, but I know that there are people who do it. I've heard from, hosts that we've contacted that they actually lived off it for some time. And they met people who were living off it for some time. Some time meaning years, right? So you can definitely live off of it. And if we applied to more people, we would have gotten more offers, right? So, and we got a 6 months kind of locked in with 42 applications. So you can definitely live off of this if you really wanted to. If you're going to be living off it, then you definitely have to be applying far in advance so that you're going to have a place to stay. Number 8, what about the rule that you can't repeat messages to people or you might get banned? Yeah, we actually ran into this. So I was doing all the messaging, and it's really hard to just create a unique message every time, right? So I would copy and paste certain portions of it that I'm like, these are not going to change because they're about us. They're not going to change for each message we send to people, just a little bit, because what we're going to say about us might differ based on the listing. But yeah, for the most part, the messages were pretty similar, and we got maybe 2 or 3 times a message from Workaway right after we sent the message, or tried to send the message saying that this is too similar to your other messages. You can't spam Workaway hosts, or we're going to block your account. But it didn't block our account. It basically just didn't send the message, and it put us right back to writing the message, and basically gave us another chance to be like, make a unique message. So it's kind of a vague rule. You just have to make sure it's not too similar. You don't want to have too much verbatim copy and paste stuff in there. I think you can have some portions in there. Like we definitely had some portions that were copy and paste, but just definitely don't spam or else you might get banned. All right, number 9 is what to include in your message to the host. So the way that we formulated our messages started out with who we are. We talked about what we're passionate about, what we care about. Since we were applying to farms, we talked about what our plans were for, building a commune together with 6 people, and how we're going to be starting a permaculture farm and all the different projects we're going to be doing. We weren't way too in depth on that section, but we were, making it known. This is our intention, and we're very eager to learn and get some hands-on experience before we do that. So that was our first section. The second section, we talked about kind of our work experience. We pretty much only mentioned work experience that was somewhat relevant to the listing. But yeah, listing whatever work experience you have is not a bad idea to put in there. We also listed our hobbies. So I think a big thing with Workaway is, since you're going to be living with people, you do want to include, stuff about yourself, stuff that you're passionate about, things that you can share with each other when you're staying with them. Because who wants to live with someone who's not interested in anything, who's not going to have anything to offer, or, have fun, unique conversations with each other? So yeah, we talked about hobbies. The next section was why we're interested in their project. So this one did change for each listing. For the most part, we talked about specifically why we're interested in their project, why we're reaching out to them, how it's important to us. Be as specific as you want to be with that. But it is important to say like, hey, I read this specific thing in your listing, like making a wildflower meadow. That sounds sick. Let's do that. Or let's do beekeeping. Or let's, I'm super passionate about building tiny homes because we're going to be building tiny homes. So just be very interested. The next part is what makes us a good fit for their listing. And with this one, we were pretty specific based on what they put in their help section on their listing, to try to be like, we check off these boxes. We don't mention what we don't check off. We just say, hey, we can do these things. We can help you with these things. We have experience with these things. This is how we're going to help you and be a good fit. That's probably the most important section to keep in there. And then at the end, we just had a contact us section with different ways of contacting us, with a little thing at the end saying, we'd love to get a Zoom meeting with you so we can get to know each other and see if it's a good fit for both of us. And that's pretty much our entire message. Number 10 is what questions to ask a host before you commit or before you arrive. These are just what we asked, but you can definitely ask your own questions. I'm just going to list them off. Number 1, what does day-to-day look like? What would we be doing day-to-day? Number 2, what days and times each week would we be working? Number 3, any particular skills or knowledge that would be helpful. So I like to ask questions that make it sound like we're, really interested and willing to learn new skills and really help them out, because we are. Number 4, sleeping arrangements. Number 5, will there be meals provided if they don't have that in their listing? And what are the meal times? Will there be shared meals, etc.? We asked about dietary restrictions. Is it really okay to be vegan? How much can you accommodate, etc.? Number 7, what kinds of clothes should we pack? They might know their weather or their environment better than you do, or Google does. Number 8, are there any cultural norms that we should be aware of? We did get a couple responses, but this question wasn't that important. I think it just shows that we're willing to respect, their space and their culture. Number 9, what's the primary language spoken, and do we need to learn any of that? That's really important. Number 10, what's the address? This is if you're already committed. Number 11, best date time to arrive. Number 12, does it have Wi-Fi? Is it possible to work part-time remotely? That's a really important question to ask. Number 13, pay. This one I didn't really ask because the listings that we applied to, that we got offers from, didn't mention pay. But it's definitely something you want to clarify beforehand. How is pay going to work? Do we need to get a contract? How does the visa work, etc.? Number 14 is public transport. My wife and I personally don't want to rent a car at every listing, so we asked, what does a public transport system look like? Are you willing to help us out with driving? Or we didn't say it exactly like that, but just trying to get a feel for what the situation will look like for getting around. 15 is obviously working visas. You 100% need to talk about this if maybe they require it or they're not comfortable with you coming without it, because technically you are required, if you're going to be volunteering in a lot of these different countries, to have a working visa, even if there's no pay. 16 is any advice. Just keep it open-ended. Is there any advice that you have for us before we come and stay with you? Because people might, have a little thing that comes up and be like, oh, yeah, make sure you get this, or make sure you take care of that before you come. And once again, it just makes it sound like you're a real person who's interested and willing to help, and not just someone who's trying to get a stay for free. Number 11 is what kind of help do hosts typically require? And this is going to vary based on every single host. But typically what we found was, for the most part, hosts like giving part-time work. They, for the most part, need help with their property or with landscaping or farming. Those tend to be the most common things. And then there's another side, which is kind of babysitting and tutoring, which we didn't really want to be a part of. Number 12, do hosts pay for travel expenses? No, they do not. Do not expect that. Number 13, hosts are told by Workaway that they are not employers, and that as long as someone's coming to volunteer, you shouldn't be involved with visas. This is at least what we heard from a host that we talked to about visas. He was like, no, like we were told by Workaway to never get involved and give people visas for when they're volunteering. So that said, it could be different for everyone, but our experience is it's going to be extremely difficult to get a working visa. Number 14, how does the whole process work from beginning to end? Very quickly, it's just you make your application, they reply, you try to set up a time for a Zoom or a WhatsApp video call, you get to know each other, you talk about what dates work for each other and see if the vibes are good, if the dates work, and then you go from there. It's pretty straightforward. Number 15, do I need reviews to land a Workaway listing? No, you don't. My wife and I don't have any reviews, and we got 9 offers, like I said. And we're applying to hosts who have reviews. So you definitely don't need reviews to find a stay. Number 16, am I able to work part-time remotely while I also work on Workaway? 100%. Yeah, it just depends on the listing and how long the work hours are. But like I said, we're working part-time, and that means 4 to 5 hours a day for 5 days a week. At least for us, that's what that means, and weekends off. So yeah, you can definitely do it as long as your remote work is not way too demanding. You definitely one thing to be cautious of is like most of the listings that we talked to, we're not 100% strict on that timeline, right? So they said 4 to 5 hours a week, but they're flexible. And that some days might be heavier than other days. So it's just an average, right? They're not taking it way too serious. They're not employers. They're just asking for volunteer work. And most of them are very good people as far as we can tell. Number 17, do all hosts provide free food? No, they don't. We got a lot of messages and offers from hosts that don't offer food. It just depends on the listing. Just make sure you ask that and you make sure, who's going to be cooking and all that kind of stuff is sorted out beforehand. Number 18 is how to create a strong profile, and this one I'll probably do a separate video for, but just to be very simple, you want to have a lot of pictures of you traveling with different people, with different animals, because a lot of listings have animals and they want to make sure that you're a nice, kind person. There is an ability to put a video on there, like a welcome video or introduction video. You should definitely do that. That will just add to your transparency. And also list any other things that you've done when it comes to house sitting or dog sitting or anything like that, or tutoring. It will show that you're a reliable person and that you are responsible. Number 19, what are some red flags for hosts before you apply? This one's a bit tough because we haven't stayed with Workaway before. We've done trusted house sitters. And what I can say with trusted house sitters and Workaway, as far as we can tell, is you want to stay away from listings that aren't very specific, that are very broad in their description, that don't have everything laid out very well, that maybe is a bit rushed, or they didn't seem like they put a lot of care and effort into making the profile or the listing, or things were messy in the pictures, or they don't have a lot of pictures in general. That's another warning sign, I would say. Like, why would you not put 5 minutes of work into getting 10 photos of you and your project? So those are the things we stayed away from, and we did have some negative experiences with those things on Trusted House Sitters. So I imagine they translate. Number 20, how long are most stays? Can you negotiate on length of stay? You can definitely negotiate on length of stay. Most hosts are pretty flexible. How long are most stays? Maybe a couple weeks, but it really just varies. But yeah, you can definitely negotiate on the stay. If you want to leave earlier, I see this question a lot. If you want to leave early, every host that we've talked to has been extremely flexible with the exact day and time that we arrive and leave, and we have as well. So it's something that you want to expect to be flexible with when you arrive and when you leave. And that's it for our 20 different things that I wish I knew before I started applying for Workaway. If you want to watch our whole process going through Workaway, at the listings, we're going to be working in Ireland, Scotland, and the Netherlands. And we're going to be trying to document the whole process. And If you're interested in any of that, give me a comment about what you'd like me to talk about while we're out there. We're also going to be making some videos about our journey with our permaculture commune, which is going to be sometime in the next year or so that we start it, with 6 different people, where we're going to be building tiny houses on land together, farming together, and creating businesses together and sharing life together. If you're interested in any of that, subscribe to the channel, drop a like, give me a comment about what you're interested in, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.